All right, so now we're actually going to go ahead and color. We're going to do some different techniques on our castle stone mold here. What I'm going to use is I'm actually just going to do brushing techniques on this, so a little bit different than the spraying techniques that we use on other panels. This is a really good panel to go ahead and use your brushing techniques, only because you have larger stones. So sometimes the brushing techniques will be really good, versus if you have it on like a dry stack panel or panels that have really small stones. It can be very time consuming to do brushing techniques, but go ahead and show you how we do brushing techniques on this panel here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to color most of it like a gray with a little bit of brown in the gray to give it some variation. And then I'm going to pick about 30% of the stones, or probably 2 stones on this panel here, and I'm going to give them a little bit of a different color so that those stand out and they're a little bit more prominent than the rest of the stones. To again, just keep our variation on the panel so it looks natural. Whenever I'm doing accent colors, I think a good rule of thumb is usually to pick about 25 to 30% of the total stones and go ahead and do those as your accent colors. And then you can do your bases and kind of your primary colors around that on the remaining 70 to 75% of the panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my gray and my nutmeg right in front of me so that I can kind of work those 2 colors at the same time. The gray is diluted 3-to-1 and my nutmeg is diluted 3-to-1 as well. And actually the bark brown is too. So every color we have on this coloring scheme is diluted at 3-to-1. That's 3 parts water, 1 part stain. So what I do with a brush, again, to have variation, what I do is I start by brushing some stain on there. When you're using the brush, you really want to make sure you scrub that color in there. And I don't color the whole panel. And I try to get it right on top with some nutmeg. And I almost like wet blend these colors together. So again, I can remain and keep my variation. Really scrub that color in there. If you're not used to using, these are water-based stains, so if it's your first time using them, just keep in mind it's not like painting a house with latex paint. This color, the stain is very thin, so you don't have to actually put a lot on your brush, and it goes a long way. And if you put a lot on and you go to color it, you'll get a lot of drips that you got to be very careful about, because you could end up having to clean up a mess. So got 1 stone done there. Again, I'm just working this nutmeg and the gray back and forth. It's very faint, but you can see variation in the stone, because if I was to go ahead, I see a lot of people, they make mistake of just taking nutmeg and they just blast it on the whole stone and they brush the whole thing full of nutmeg, and then it looks very flat and it looks like somebody actually went ahead and colored the panels versus them being real rocks. I see a lot of people when they're staining is they just start to overthink it. The main thing is you want to keep your brush moving. You kind of want to keep, randomization to it. Don't really overthink it and try to manufacture it. Kind of let the colors do their thing and kind of just let them flow, so that it looks natural and it actually doesn't look thought out and manufactured, like I said. So I'm going to go ahead and actually color these 3 stones. I'm going to use the bark brown and nutmeg on these 3 stones. And again, I'm going to use these 2 colors kind of at the same time. And since I really want that brown to stick out, I'm going to color the majority of the rock that brown color, bark brown. And I'll use the nutmeg just to create some variation. If you do get drips, you want to make sure you brush them out right away. The stain can, especially on a warm day, it can dry very fast. If you don't brush out the drips, then those stains will actually, or the drips will actually stain like that. You'll have to sand them out. Sometimes I like using darker colors kind of in these crevices to create shadows, to create some depth. So again, I can kind of just brush it in there and just lay it in and take my bark brown and kind of fade that back out so it doesn't look too dark in that one spot. All right, so we'll let that dry, and we're going to go ahead and use that same scratching technique that we use on all of our panels to give it a nice tumbled finish.